was a bad start. All right, thanks guys for joining me. Wanted to make a little bit of response or expansion on the discussion from Fazlift's recent video regarding instinctive training. Because after watching it, or as I watched it, I realized I've actually over the years begun to use more and more instinct and intuition in my training. So I'm thankful that he decided to bring up the topic to start the discussion. And it kind of spurred me to do this, and it's something that I didn't realize I wanted to, but I've been wanting to talk about for a while. So before I get into the actual response itself, since this is my first time really talking about Faz, wanted to just talk a bit about him real quick. What I really appreciate about him is the fact that a lot of his takes are different than some of the typical ones I hear. Such as he likes to time rest periods. He prefers a much greater caloric restriction when dieting, just a few other things here and there, but they are all informed from not only his personal experience in competitive bodybuilding, competitive powerlifting, and competitive strongman, but also as a coach for people. So not only his experience in various competitions and various areas of lifting, but also his direct experience with training different people and different life experiences. So whenever I hear a take from him that disagrees with a lot of the majority that I hear, I know it's informed from experience and just shows the breadth of how different things work for different people. Most things work for, like a certain thing might work for most, but he's one of the ones where he's find that maybe he's a minority where something different will work. So that's always enjoyable, seeing a different take from him. So to get to the actual response portion and talking about intuition and instinct in your training, I first do want to start by saying at this point in my training career, I don't even know. I first started officially training with real weights at 14. So I have well over a decade of training, but also over a decade of actually being in a gym, because I didn't immediately have access to a full gym, but also in strong excess of 1,000 sessions inside of a gym. That is a lot of opportunity through experience to be able to build my instincts, to train my intuition. It does need to be trained. You can't start from the beginning. I believe in his video he even brought up how for some people instinctive training is probably not a good call, and for beginners it is a terrible call. If you're brand new or potentially even in your intermediate phase, trying to go on your instincts is probably terrible because they suck. They haven't been trained. It's a tool you are not familiar with, and that's what using your instincts are. It is a tool. It's not like the next phase of gains. It's just another tool you can use for your gains. And actually, for certain things, to my limited understanding, things such as strength sports, as a strength athlete, instincts a lot more of the time are probably the wrong tool, as opposed to something like bodybuilding, which is I'm just pure bodybuilding. That is a tool that can often be a lot more useful because it feels like a lot more of an art as opposed to a science like strength. This is just kind of how it feels for me. For me, bodybuilding is an art, and going with your gut once experienced can be very beneficial. So in the different areas of my training that fall under more instinctive versus less instinctive, all the way on the less instinctive, we have my training days. Because of how my schedule works, I have a job and a family and all of this, I need to already know my training days ahead of time. I can't just go with what I feel is ready, because if I just went on whether or not I felt like training that day or what feels like a good time to train, I would never train. So I do need to plan out ahead of time when I'm going to be to go to the gym. That means sometimes going to the gym right after work or waking up at 5 a.m. on an off day to go, so that way I can be done before my family wakes up. So there is no instinct in that. There is fully having to plan that out ahead of time. Where it begins to get into more instinctive is the rest of my routine. I can't tell you my routine because I don't have a routine. I tend to follow a template I develop, but the movements and the weights and all this change based on what I feel I need. For instance, right now, I am usually training 4 days a week. It follows 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 2 days off, effectively. So for my second day of training through the week, that is the least instinctive day at the moment because I kind of have it figured out, because I'm basically stealing it from months ago when I was cutting and was only training 3 days a week. So I'm just basically taking that exact same day and reusing it. So it's a more quad and chest focused day. So I already know I'm pretty much always going to be opening up with like a super deep leg press. And then I also trade all supersets and giant sets. And then my next couple giant sets are probably going to have the foundational chest movement as the core of those giant sets. The other 3 days of my training week, I'm still largely figuring out and putting together a template. But even then, they won't ever fully be locked to where I can tell you ahead of time exactly every single exercise I'm training every single day of the week. I can tell you what movements and what muscles I'm most likely to be prioritizing, and even give you a rough idea of what exercises I think might work, but I won't be able to write out for you my routine ahead of time. This is also where I've found historically I've used my intuition a lot for training, because there have been some times where as I'm working, I can be planning out my next session days in advance. So by the time I get to the gym, I already know exactly what I want to do. Other times, life is so crazy that I walk into the gym that day and realize I never actually thought out what I wanted to do. So I'm having to think on the spot, what do I feel ready for? Or it could be a case where I might have known what I wanted to do, but I get there, maybe I was held late, or like time crunch is coming on me, or for some reason I just don't have the energy. Maybe I suspect I'm coming down with something, or I had terrible sleep, or some other factor where I'm not able to perform what I initially wanted to. Or I am coming in at a busy time. And then suddenly I'm like, okay, what am I able to get myself to do? How can I officially use what energy and time I have available to maximize training everything? Because in bodybuilding, there are no accessory movements. So it's not like I can think, okay, today's my deadlift day, so I need to pour my energy at very least into doing my deadlift or deadlift variation. And if I run out of time or energy on my deadlift accessories, that's fine. Because I don't train that way, that will not work. I need to think, what are all the muscles I want to hit today? And how can I choose different exercises and reps and weights and consider stimulus to fatigue ratios and all of this stuff to allow me to maintain a certain degree of intensity throughout the entire session to hit everything that needs to be hit, because there aren't accessories that I can just drop. No muscle is an accessory. No muscle is secondary to the entire physique. So that is where a lot of instinct comes in. And once again, that comes through experience. Being able to figure out what can I do on the fly. It's not part of any program. It's not part of any routine. I need to figure it out. Also, because depending on how busy the gym is, even if I have the time and the energy, certain equipment might be used. Or because I'm in a hardcore bodybuilding gym, there could potentially be some very big name in bodybuilding training, not only at the same time I am, but maybe even in the right station next to me. And because I want to try to be respectful, and since I record some of my training, I try to keep them out of the background. So I've actually had to just change what movement or machine I'm doing to hit that desired muscle, just so I can record easier. Or even if it's just a regular member, I try as much as possible to keep even regular members out of the background, because it's just, since I don't know if I'm even going to use all the footage, but if I do, I don't want to be posting random people up without their consent as much as possible. And since bodybuilding is just about hitting the desired muscle, not the specificity of getting better at a movement, just the specificity of getting a muscle bigger, I can use my instincts to feel it out. And there's also other reasons why I might have to feel out what things on the day I'm training. It could be, like I said, because of having to take into consideration not having people in the background, or maybe a machine's being used, or I don't want to be going too far around in the gym in a giant set when there's lots of people, so they may not know I'm using something, and in the middle of a giant set they suddenly start using something that I was using because it didn't look like it was being used because I was on the other side of the gym. There's lots of reasons. So that's where being able to feel what will hit what you need to hit works out. There have been some days where, to be more specific, where I come in, I know I want my second giant set to be built around a chest movement. but I'm not sure when I show up which chest movement will be best. So once I finish my first giant set for other things, like I said, for my second day of training, my day opens with hitting quads. So once I get to the second giant set where I'm going to be hitting chest, I'm then looking, okay, do I feel I have the energy to do the conventional bench press for my chest movement and then have enough energy left to hit my other giant sets effectively for the rest of the body? Or do I feel like a seated hammer strength chest press is better, or a dumbbell barrel press? And in those moments, that's where I might use instinct to decide, today the seated chest press feels a little bit better. The quicker setup, the quicker cleanup, the lesser warm up, the more stable position. Have to put less mental and physical energy into stabilizing as I do the movement, because it's already a machine. I don't have to try to move like a machine. It's already a machine. Numerous reasons where I'm like, today this is what I'm doing, even though the week prior I might have selected the conventional bench for different reasons. So my actual exercise selection is often instinctive, along with many times the weight I use, the tempo I use, and even lots of subtleties about the form I use. Because actually, this leads right into another good point regarding training your instincts, the mind-muscle connection. The mind-muscle connection is probably actually worth a video on its own, but the mind-muscle connection is not just where you feel the pump. It's a lot more subtle and nuanced in regarding being able to actually feel the desired muscle moving, even in low reps. When you've learned how to have a good mind-muscle connection with a particular muscle, you might be able to feel it and have the mind-muscle connection on a set of 5 or even less. When you're actually going through the rep, you can feel the exact areas you want to work, the exact muscles you want to work, being worked, being stretched in the eccentric. That's the important part of the mind-muscle connection. So as I'm focusing on the mind-muscle connection going through my form, as such as an eccentric on a bench press, I can directly feel the actual pec fibers being the things moving, being stretched and contracting and all of this. And so by focusing on the mind-muscle connection, a lot of my tempo and my form is automatically picked out. And what I also do is I know if I go too high of reps or too low of reps, it'll ruin my ability to have the mind-muscle connection. So I know today I want to do, let's say, a back movement, and I want to be able to do it in a way that lets me get close to failure or even to failure, and I want to be able to feel the muscles properly. So I instinctively select a weight that I know will allow me to get within a rep range. And for something like back, usually 8 to 15 is a good range. I prefer wider ranges because I don't like to have to change weights week to week very often. I prefer to stick with the same weight for a while until I leave a rep range to where I could feel a proper mind-muscle connection, and then I do a bigger jump. I try not to be concerned about the weights. I try to be concerned about the feel. But when the feel is no longer there because I can do too many reps, that's when I jump up in weight. That's just how I work. Some people like a tighter range and jumping up weight more frequently, because I have fallen for the trap of pushing numbers before trying to be too strength focused when honestly my goal is hypertrophy. That's why I prefer the broader rep range, which is, once again, that's the thing I learned through experience, which is now part of my instinct and my intuition, broader rep ranges. So I'll do my weight selection based on that. And then once I don't, like in the example of 8 to 15 for back, I won't go, oh, I was able to hit at least 15 on all 3 sets of my back movement today, so next time I'm going to jump up weight. What I'll do is, if I can still feel the desired mind-muscle connection and hit failure appropriately, I'll stick with that weight. So that way I can be dumb and I don't have to do more plate math next time. But once I start having sessions where the reps are so high that I can't get the proper mind-muscle connection, then I'll jump up the weight. Or if I jump up the weight and I realize the reps are so low or something else that I cannot get myself to have the proper mind-muscle connection, or I feel that it's affecting my form negatively, I'll peel back some weight and wait. A good example of this is with neck training, for instance. I want to be very hesitant with moving up weight in neck training. Well, for one, if you royally mess up some other movements and like mess up your arm or your leg, you can get a prosthetic arm or leg in a absolute worst case situation. You can't get a prosthetic neck, so you already want to be careful. So that's why I stick to 15 to 25 for neck. But also, if I jump up in weight, I can, if I readily feel it affecting my form, like if I can only get 8 reps on my first set of neck, that's too heavy. Like I'm having to do a lot of funky stuff to get it moving, and it is not a smooth movement, and that is far too risky. So I will decide that was stupid. I'm not going to go up in that much weight, or I'm going to re-listen to my form, which is actually something I will want to make a video on, things I've learned regarding neck training and form and such, but that's not to dive into on this one. This is probably already going to be long enough. But it's that being able to listen to the body, using your instincts as you get more advanced, and you're experimenting with what works for you and experimenting with new exercises that can actually help a lot with injury prevention. I found, like as I did mention with the neck, which I really do think is worth its own video, and I'm probably going to be doing as one of my next few. I think instinctive training and focusing on, not on the reps, not on the weight, not on numbers, but focusing on the feel and the sensation of the muscles in the region I'm working, I think potentially has saved my neck from injury, because I'm able to continually reevaluate my form and find ways to tweak it so it feels better and feels safer. If I was just going and saying, hey, I need to do this many sets of this many reps at this weight of neck extension, and I just went for it, I probably would have already hurt myself. But fortunately, I didn't. But that's something that a beginner hasn't learned to listen to their body, so they wouldn't really be able to do. But even with that said, all this instinct and training, data still matters. I've been still keeping track of every single workout in little like college rule bound notebooks ever since my very first session with an adjustable 40-pound dumbbell set when I was 14, 28 now. So it's been a good minute, a lot of sessions recorded. It's the only type of journal I've ever been able to consistently keep, is a training journal. Hopefully I didn't miss, I only took like a little bit. I mean, actually, for me, this is actually a lot of notes and bullet points. So hopefully I didn't miss anything I wanted to say. I just wanted to add to the conversation with my experience of how I've used instinctive training as a bodybuilder. It's come a lot into play. Exercise selection, weights, how I use my form. I manipulate it based on what allows me to feel the desired muscle. Found it is a great tool, but I do agree with what Faz says, that it probably won't unlock the next level of gains. It's just another tool. And like any tool, there are times where it's the appropriate one and times where it is not the appropriate one. For instance, if you need to hang up a picture on the wall, a screw or a nail could work. So therefore a screwdriver or a nail could work. But there are times where the specific thing you need is only a screw, or where a nail could work, but a screw would be superior. And I feel that's what instinctive training is like. It's like a screw as opposed to a nail. Very similar in what it's capable of doing, but there's nuance in times where it's superior, and in other cases it doesn't really make a difference, or it may even be worse. Like if there's a case where you need a lot of nails very quickly and the benefits of a screw are non-existent, a nail gun's the better thing, because you can just get those nails out very quickly, where to get that many screws into place with a screwdriver, even a power screwdriver, would take so much longer. And if you're in a time crunch, could actually be detrimental to what you need to do. And instinctive training can't be that. If you're new, or I believe if you're like a strength athlete trying to go heavily on intuition and instinct, could probably ruin you, because especially if you're new, you don't really know what you're doing, your instincts aren't trained, and if you go by what you feel you want to do nothing, because you're used to not doing anything, especially if you're like normal sedentary. Otherwise, it's just a tool. It will not make you jacked, but if used appropriately after training the instinct, it can contribute to you getting jacked, is a short version. So hopefully I got my points out. Hopefully I was concise. Thanks, Faz, for opening up the conversation, and I think that'll do it all for now. Thanks for joining me.